Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jai Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Pajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Pajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Muttabad Paramahansa Purvikacharya Astotra Tata Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Purvikacharya Astotra Tata Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Glenn, is it 37 or 38? 37? I think it's 38. Yeah.
I think 38.
38, thank you, Tavis. Okay. On this 19th day of January 2021 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in chapter 6 entitled Dhyana Yoga, text number 37 on page 290 of most of your books. Arjuna Vacha Ayati Shadhayopeto Ayati Shadhayopeto Yogat Chalitamanasaha Yogat Chalitamanasaha Aprapya Yoga Sangsiddhim Aprapya Yoga Sangsiddhim Kamgatim Krishna Gacchati. Did I read the wrong verse? 38, right? I'm sorry. All right, well, let's start again. Text 38 on page 291. Kachin Nobaya Viprashtas Chinnabhram Ivanashyati Apatishto Mahabaho Vimudho Brahmanakpati Kachinobaya Vibrashtas Chinnabhram Ivanashyati Apatishto mahabaho vimudho brahmanakpati kachinno bhaya vimbrashtas chinna brahmimanashyati. Apatishto mahabaho vimudho brahmanakpati. Kachinno bhaya vibrashtas chinna brahmivanashyati. Apatishto mahabaho vimudho brahmanakpati. Kachinno bhaya vibrashtas chinna brahmivanashyati. Apatishto mahabaho vimudho brahmanakpati. Kachinno bhaya vimbrashtas chinna brahmivanashyati. Apatishto mahabaho vimudho brahmanakpati. Excuse me. Word by word definitions. Kachit, whether, na, not, ubhaya, both, vimbrashtaha, deviated from, chinna, torn, abhram, cloud, eva like, nashyati, perishes, apatishtaha, without any position, mahabaho, almighty on Krishna, vimudha, bewildered, brahmanaha, of transcendence, pati, on the path. Translation. Almighty on Krishna, does not such a man, who is bewildered from the path of transcendence, fall away from both spiritual and material success, and perish like a riven cloud, with no position in any sphere? Purport. There are two ways to progress. Those who are materialists have no interest in transcendence. Therefore they are more interested in material advancement by economic development, or in promotion to the higher planets by appropriate work. When one takes to the path of transcendence, one has to cease all material activities and sacrifice all forms of so-called material happiness. If the aspiring transcendentalist fails, then he apparently loses both ways. In other words, he can enjoy neither material happiness nor spiritual success. He has no position. He is like a riven cloud. A cloud in the sky sometimes deviates from a small cloud and joins a big one. But if it cannot join a big one, then it is blown away by the wind and becomes a non-entity in the vast sky. The Brahmanakpati is the path of transcendental realization through knowing oneself to be spiritual in essence, part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, who is manifested as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Lord Shri Krishna is the fullest manifestation of the Supreme Absolute Truth, and therefore one who is surrendered to the Supreme Person is a successful transcendentalist. To reach this goal of life through Brahman and Paramatma realization takes many, many births. Bahunam janmanam ante. Therefore, the supermost path of transcendental realization is Bhakti Yoga, or Krishna consciousness, the direct method. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I will offer my humble obeisance unto him and to all members of Sri Parampara. So Arjun is presenting a couple of questions here, which indicate that he's very pessimistic about succeeding in the process of Ashtanga Yoga or Dhyana Yoga that Krishna has outlined. And rightly so. He's a family man. He's deeply involved in the battle and warriorship. And it seems to him that he's not at all suited for this process of going alone to the forest and sitting down and just breaking all these relationships. And so he's visualizing himself sitting there, trying to follow the process, but failing, and his mind is, disturbed back on the war field or wherever, And so now he doesn't have the kingdom, and he's not succeeding in yoga, so he lost both. systems. He's giving a rather material view of the whole thing. And so Prabhupada is describing that situation, or that apparent situation, for one who is materially tinged, and he's looking at spiritual life through a material lens. Because as Krishna will explain in a few verses, and he has already said in chapter 2, there's no loss or diminution when you're on a sincere spiritual path, especially bhakti yoga. But in every step here, not only has Prabhupada described the yoga system as part and parcel, or equivalent to bhakti yoga. In other words, bhakti yoga has everything that Ashtanga yoga has in its perfection, and the great advantage of bhakti yoga is that it's practical. In this age, we can actually do it. But in either case, even if Arjuna was to try and fail, he really wouldn't fail, because there's no loss or diminution. If you're generally trying to connect to the Supreme Lord, then your whatever progress you make is you pick up in the next lifetime. So that's what we'll hear. But here he's looking at the whole thing as one would who's materially calculated. It's just like, if we invest all our money and into this endeavor or this project, and it ends up a bust, nobody buys the product, and the price of the stock collapses. We lost, In other words, we had some money we could use for something else. Now we don't have that money. We don't have our project, so now we're in trouble. We've lost everything. But that's not the way spiritual endeavor works, because it's not bound by material laws. The value that you get, if it's genuinely spiritual, is progress in reawakening your relationship with Krishna, which is always there. And if you've just begun that process, well, then you'll take it up in your next life. Now, someone who looks at it, at this situation dispassionately, will say, well, why shouldn't I try as hard as possible? In other words, you'll pick it up in the next life, but you'll have to go through birth again and the sufferings of the material world. So there's a great impetus to become serious and try to get out of the material world. But it's not that we should become discouraged and think that we failed, in bhakti yoga. Even the many devotees, I'm one of almost 5,000 Prabhupada disciples. There's a finite number of direct disciples. And so there's a list has been compiled, Now, many of them may be active, and I don't know about them. But as far as the number of devotees who are fully active in the International Society for Krishna Consciousness at this time, who are my god brothers and god sisters, it's quite a small number. If it's 200, I'd be surprised, out of 5,000. So, they may be practicing on their own, doing this or whatever, but whatever they've done is to their eternal credit. There's no loss, It may be suspended for some time, and then you may go through a lot of suffering, but still that asset is there, and it'll manifest in the next life, Sometimes it manifests later in this life. We've seen that happen, where someone leaves for some time, and then, they get some terminal disease, and they become very serious. They find out devotees, they take shelter again, and, they pass away with devotees around them chanting Hare Krishna, which is really the gold standard, to have that kind of association at the end. So this is this famous riven cloud verse, and we'll see that this is a doubt. He will mention in the next verse, and only Krishna can clear the doubt, and he will. He'll encourage him in different destinations according to how far you've advanced in yoga, but all of them are positive. So, okay, any questions on this text? Okay. Moving along, text 39. Etan me sankshayam Krishna Chaitumar-hasya sheshataha Tvadanyak sankshayasya Chaitana yupapadyate. This is my doubt, O Krishna, and I ask you to dispel it completely. But for you, No one is to be found who can destroy this doubt. Purport. Krishna is the perfect knower of past, present, and future. In the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord said that all living entities existed individually in the past, they exist now in the present, and they continue to retain individual identity in the future, even after liberation from the material entanglement. So he has already cleared up the question of the future of the individual living entity. Now, Arjuna wants to know of the future of the unsuccessful transcendentalist. No one is equal to or above Krishna, and certainly the so-called great sages and philosophers who are at the mercy of material nature cannot equal him. Therefore, the verdict of Krishna is the final and complete answer to all doubts, because he knows past, present, and future perfectly. But no one knows him. Krishna and Krishna-conscious devotees alone can know what is what. So, these kind of doubts come up again and again in the Bhagavad Gita. You remember in the end of the 4th chapter, Krishna says, "Slay these doubts, O Arjuna," because that's the chapter about transcendental knowledge, and get on the boat of transcendental knowledge. So the doubts are like in the form of demons. That's why sometimes he uses the name Madhusudana, because Krishna killed the Madhu demon. So Krishna is the best one to slay our doubts. But we have to have faith in his words. If you have faith in Krishna's words, then you come to the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita and you surrender unto him. But the surrendering is a daily affair. Until you become pure and you're surrendered forever, then we need to reiterate that surrender at every day or even every hour, every moment. It's a state of being. It's not just a one-time activity. But that surrender is based on the faith in Krishna's promises and Krishna's words in the Bhagavad Gita. And that's Srila Prabhupada came in order to give us Krishna's instruction. He would always insist, I'm not speaking my words, He would say, anyone who doesn't surrender unto Krishna is a fool and is a rascal. I'm not saying it. You argue with Krishna. Namam Dushkrita no mudha, but directly says those who don't surrender unto me are mudas, fools, lowest among mankind. So if you have faith in that, you say, well, I don't want to belong to that category, so I better surrender. So much of the Bhagavad Gita is building that faith, and Arjuna personifies it at the end. At the beginning he didn't. Krishna wanted him to fight, and he had so many arguments why he didn't want to fight. But he came to the right conclusions that, well, I'm not solving my problem. I've lost my nature as a Kshatriya because of this material affection for, my teacher, my grandfather, all these friends, relatives, and so even the sons of Dhritarashtra. So he recognizes his situation. And this is very important at the point of surrendering to the Guru. You remember that dramatic scene where Sanatana Goswami actually surrenders to Lord Chaitanya and he begins instructing him. And, he was very advanced materially. He had, knew so many languages, very learned. He had a position on the right hand of the king, of the Nawab, whatever you call him. And yet he had to come to the point of realizing this was useless. It's worse than useless. The pride that this may engender in me is an obstacle to my advancement in devotional service, my realization. So he surrenders. It's a wonderful painting where he's bowing down. He's got the straw in his teeth, and it says, "Ke ami, ke ne amai jane japai try." Who am I? Why am I suffering in this world? If I don't know the answer to these questions, then what use is my so-called erudition? People are praising me. It's just foolish. So that kind of attitude, and having the faith that the spiritual master, in the case of Lord Chaitanya, is Krishna himself, and is Krishna himself here, that he can actually solve the dilemma and resolve all of these doubts and place us on the firm boat of faith in the process and determination. So Arjuna is personifying that. This is my doubt, and only you can solve it. So it's a perfect setup for Krishna to resolve his doubts and all of our doubts as well. Okay, so now he has these famous verses about the destination of the unsuccessful yogi. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Parthanaiveha Namutra namutra vinashas tasya vidyate nahi kalyana krit kaschid durgating tata gacchati. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Son of Prita, a transcendentalist engaged in auspicious activities does not meet with destruction, either in this world or in the spiritual world. One who does good, my friend, is never overcome by evil. Purport. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.17, Sri Narada Muni instructs Vyasadeva as follows. I'll say, you say. Chakpa swadharmam charanam bhujang hare bhajan napakvo tapate tato yadi yatra kvava bhadhamabhura mushrikim kovata apto bhajatam swadharmataha. If someone gives up all material prospects and takes complete shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then there is no loss or degradation in any way. On the other hand, a non-devotee may fully engage in his occupational duties and not gain anything. For material prospects, there are many activities, both scriptural and customary. A transcendentalist is supposed to give up all material activities for the sake of spiritual advancement in life, Krishna consciousness. One may argue that by Krishna consciousness one may attain the highest perfection if it is completed. But if one does not attain such a perfectional stage, then he loses both materially and spiritually. It is enjoined in the scriptures that one has to suffer the reaction for not executing prescribed duties. Therefore, one who fails to discharge transcendental activities properly becomes subjected to these reactions. The Bhagavatam assures the unsuccessful transcendentalist that there need be no worries. Even though he may be subjected to the reaction for not perfectly executing prescribed duties, he is still not a loser, because auspicious Krishna consciousness is never forgotten. And one so engaged will continue to be so even if he is low-born in the next life. On the other hand, one who simply follows strictly the prescribed duties need not necessarily attain auspicious results if he is lacking in Krishna consciousness. The purport may be understood as follows. Humanity may be divided into two sections, namely the regulated and the non-regulated. Those who are engaged simply in bestial sense gratifications, without knowledge of their next life or spiritual salvation, belong to the non-regulated section. And those who follow the principles of prescribed duties in the scriptures are classified amongst the regulated section. The non-regulated section, both civilized and non-civilized, educated and non-educated, strong and weak, are full of animal propensities. Their activities are never auspicious, because while enjoying the animal propensities of eating, sleeping, defending, and mating, they perpetually remain in material existence, which is always miserable. On the other hand, those who are regulated by scriptural injunctions, and who thus rise gradually to Krishna consciousness, certainly progress in life. Those who are following the path of auspiciousness may be divided into three sections, namely 1, the followers of scriptural rules and regulations who are enjoying material prosperity; 2, those who are trying to find ultimate liberation from material existence; and 3, those who are devotees in Krishna consciousness. Those who are following the rules and regulations of the scriptures for material happiness may be further divided into two classes, those who are fruitive workers and those who desire no fruit for sense gratification. Those who are after fruitive results for sense gratification may be elevated to a higher standard of life, even to the higher planets, but still, because they are not free from material existence, they are not following the truly auspicious path. The only auspicious activities are those which lead one to liberation. Any activity which is not aimed at ultimate self-realization or liberation from the material bodily concept of life is not at all auspicious. Activity in Krishna consciousness is the only auspicious activity, and anyone who voluntarily accepts all bodily discomforts for the sake of making progress on the path of Krishna consciousness can be called a perfect transcendentalist under severe austerity. And because the Eightfold Yoga system is directed toward the ultimate realization of Krishna consciousness, such practice is also auspicious, and no one who is trying his best in this matter need fear degradation. Okay, so a very fascinating purport here. First of all, this verse, which Prabhupada would often quote from the 5th chapter of the 1st canto. This is a verse, part of the verse in verses in which Narada Muni is encouraging Vyasadeva to write the Bhagavatam. And previous to this verse, the first verse in that series, he's giving a judgment for all of the books he's already written. You remember, Vyasadeva had written all these Puranas. He'd written the Mahabharata, which contains Bhagavad Gita. He'd written the Vedanta Sutra. And in spite of writing all these books, the Upanishads, he was dissatisfied. And he suspected why, because he hadn't sufficiently glorified Krishna. And Narada Muni came and confirmed that judgment. And he was speaking really strongly. His first verse of instruction is basically saying all of those books you wrote are like a pilgrimage for crows, because they're not sufficiently glorifying Krishna. Nayad vachas chitrapadang hare yasho jagat pavitram pagunita karachit. He says that even though it's chitrapadam, it may be very nice literary creation, if it doesn't glorify Krishna, the purifier of the whole universe, then it is vayasam tirtam, a pilgrimage for crows. In other words, it's too much material motivation in there, too much attraction for karma kanda, and people, as he will say in a few verses, people will just take the parts that allow for sense gratification, like sacrificing animals, and they'll forget about the strictures. You've given them an out. You've given them a chance to use the scripture for material purposes, which is self-defeating. And so then after that, on the other hand, Tad Bhagavasago Janadata Bhikbhado, those words which may be imperfectly composed in every verse, but they glorify the Supreme Lord. They're heard and chanted and accepted by the great souls, because they're actually purifying if they're sincerely composed. So then he started saying, Tak Vasudam, if one gives up his place in Varnashram Dharma, which you're engaging in more or less for a material motive. So he gives that up, and he worships the lotus feet of Hari, bhajan, but his bhajan is immature. He quits before graduating, in other words, perfecting. A pakvo, not well cooked. And he falls down, literally patet. You see? Where is there any abhadra? Because we've just been discussing, as Krishna describes, there's no loss or diminution. In other words, one who does good is never overcome by evil. Whatever you do on the really genuine transcendental path is your eternal credit. But one who very nicely engages in all his activities in Varnashram, but abhajatam, he doesn't worship the Lord, then where is kovatapta? What does he really get of value? There's no value. You're just deepening your involvement in the material world. You see? So that's the key verse. And then the next verse, Narada Muni, again Prabhupada quote this verse all the time, Tasyaiva heto prayate kovida. One who's intelligent will strive for that which you cannot get in this material world by going up to Brahmaloka, down to Patalaloka. Tasyaiva heto prayate kovido nalabite yad brahmatam uparyada. Because every aspiration for increasing your material happiness is just a waste of time. You've already programmed it in by your past life, how much happiness you're going to enjoy. Now it may not be obvious. Someone strives very much and then he becomes rich, and he gets a big house. But he may be the most miserable man, in the city. Some simple fellow who's leading a pious life, has a nice family, he's happy. It's the happiness that counts, not what the accoutrements. You know what I'm saying? And you find that's often the case. What it takes for you to become very wealthy, especially in the present world, you've had to step over so many people's heads, and bend the laws or break them, So you're carrying all that with you. That karma is with you, and depressing you. So you can't enjoy it. That's what I mean, Whereas one who's living a simple life of goodness is actually enjoying. So the point is, it's already programmed in. That's what this verse says. Ranghasa, kala ranghasa, the very powerful force of time, which plays out your karma, is already going to give you X number of minutes of so-called happiness, and so you're wasting your time. Rather, one should strive for what you can't get in the material world. In other words, strive for Krishna consciousness. That makes sense. So that's the whole point of this point of this verse, is that Krishna is encouraging Arjuna to, even if you don't succeed, it's worth striving for, because this is an auspicious path and you'll never lose anything. That's the whole idea. The problem is that in the material frame of mind, a mindset, you don't appreciate the value of the spiritual side of life, And sometimes you see that with devotees. If you start slackening off, or you commit some offense, then Krishna consciousness just seems like, well, I'm wasting my time. I got, go out. I got to make my way. Your whole frame of reference changes, and it becomes very difficult to stay in the association of devotees. Admittedly, it's a struggle. It's a daily struggle with the mind and the senses, and But if you really make some progress, then it becomes easier to get into that mood of enthusiasm. Don't remember how important enthusiasm is for the path and for your sadhana and everything related to Krishna consciousness. Remembering that one who does good is never overcome by evil, and there's no loss or diminution. Now, Prabhupada gives us very interesting analysis here of different types of people. Generally, there's this threefold category, which Lord Chaitanya says. There's the karmis, the materialists, and they're also a category. They could be pious karmis who are working according to the Vedas, and so forth. So they're not grossly sinful. But in this present age, most, materialists are committing gross sins and on a very, very dark path. So then there's this few, very, very, very few, who recognize how dangerous and self-defeating such a path is, and so they strive for something transcendental. And they'll be the yogis and the impersonalists, those who are after mukti. That's their main goal, but they're not ready to surrender to Krishna. These are like the Mayavadis or Brahmavadis, you know what I mean? So they'll try to become very austere and curb down the senses, because they know that that's what's attracting them and keeping them bound here, But it's a very, very difficult path without Krishna, So that's another category. And then you have the yogis, who are described here, but really not. These are yogis who are not bhaktas. These yogis here, they make Krishna the ultimate goal of life. But yogis who just become very austere and they get to cities, and we have so many in the Bhagavatam, Durvasa Muni and Vishwamitra, who become, and then, all these demons. All these demons who Krishna kills. I mean, they're expert shapeshifters and they have all these powers. They're no slouches. They're yogis. But their motive is nefarious. And Krishna kills them. So you have the karmis and the yogis and the mukti kamis, muktivads, and then you have the bhaktas. So who's really confident and peaceful? This verse is about peace, the one by Lord Chaitanya. Krishna bhakta nishkama ate eva shanta. Bhukti mukti siddhi kami sakali ashanta. And that idea of having peace of mind, you can really have peace of mind when you're confident that you're on the all auspicious path, and that you have these very powerful entities who are helping you. Foremost, this is Krishna himself. If you're really sincerely trying, we get so much assurance that Krishna is helping us. So even though we're Kali Yugites, we're so disqualified, with who knows what kind of background, still we're encouraged that if we surrender, even in our present state, and try our best, Krishna will help us. The yogis don't have that. The karmis certainly don't have that. And the mukti kamis don't have it either. Krishna's not interested in people who are not trying to get close to him. They just want to be free of birth and death for their own selfish reasons. That's really what it's all about. So we want to stay firmly within that first group, the bhaktas, and we can attain the most rare thing in this world, real peace. Peace of mind. Even in dangerous situations, you can keep equipoise because you have confidence Krishna will protect. you're doing the greatest thing for yourself. So that's Krishna is again encouraging, and then he goes more explicitly here. Prapi punya kutam lokan ushidva shashvati samaha shuchinam shimatam gehe yoga brashto vijayate. The unsuccessful yogi, after many, many years of enjoyment on the planets of the pious living entities, is born into a family of righteous people or into a family of rich aristocracy. Purport. The unsuccessful yogis are divided into two classes. One has fallen after very little progress, and one has fallen after long practice of yoga. The yogi who falls after a short period of practice goes to the higher planets, whereas pious living entities are allowed to enter. After prolonged life there, one is sent back again to this planet to take birth in the family of a righteous Brahmin Vaishnav or of an aristocratic merchants. The real purpose of yoga practice is to achieve the highest perfection of Krishna consciousness, as explained in the last verse of this chapter. But those who do not persevere to such an extent and who fail because of material allurements are allowed, by the grace of the Lord, to make full utilization of their material propensities. And after that, they are given opportunities to live prosperous lives in righteous or aristocratic families. Those who are born in such families may take advantage of the facilities and try to elevate themselves to full Krishna consciousness. So, you've got two destinies here. One is destinations. The righteous people, or rich aristocracy. I think we would probably agree that being born in a righteous family is safer. You know, if you're born in a family of rich aristocracy, there's a good chance you're going to get deviated and try to enjoy that wealth. So that's, and in the next verse will say, but even better is to be born in a family of yogis, bhakti yogis. Prabhupada gives his own life as an example. I think, yeah, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So you're carrying forward the many years of enjoyment. You just make a little bit of advancement and you go to the heavenly planets. You know, of course, for devotees, that's like what is the analogy? Akasha Pushpa, you know, a flower in the sky. Who wants it? Who cares about it? You know, we're not involved. Does anyone here want to go to Nanda Gardens? I don't. If you read about it, you know, you live for a long time, you know, you have healthy bodies, plenty of chance for sense gratification, and now you don't have to worry about all this madness, air pollution, everything. But not, you know, once you read a little bit. I was reading the most amazing purport, you know, I mean, I've read it many times before, but somehow every time I read it, it's like, this is quite remarkable. In the Adi Lila chapter 5, this is the glories of Nityananda Prabhu, and it's written by Krishna's Kaviraj, who regards himself as a disciple, either a Shiksha disciple, some kind of disciple of Nityananda. So, and there's this longest purport in the entire, I think in all of Prabhupada's books, or maybe there's one more that's longer in the Bhagavatam, but it goes on and on. I mean, it's like 20 pages long, this purport. And it's describing Vaikuntha Loka and how the yogis get there and all of these different things. It's a remarkable purport. And it's just saying, you know, devotee reading that, you know, this kind of devotee who's faith in Prabhupada's books, you know, he said, this is all real. You know, this is not some fairy tale. This is real. And after reading that, why would one become interested in, you know, some material opulence? You know what I'm saying? Which keeps you bound to this world. So this is the great advantage of coming in touch with the genuine presentation of Krishna Bhakti, is that if you have faith and it's real for you, then it obliterates it should obliterate all other motivations. Now you may still, you know, you're still not a pure devotee and everything, and you have, you know, these allurements, but the central thrust of your life is to try to get as close to that as possible. And the wonderful thing is that if you're sincere and you're practicing, at a certain point, you know, you'll feel a glimpse of that, even in this world. You know, the deity is open. You've just done maybe an extra special sacrifice, and you really put out in devotional service, and you see the deities are so alluring and so compassionate and so beautiful and attractive, that's their reciprocation with you, your taste for everything in Krishna consciousness. So that it just obliterates. I mean, and then mukti. Does anyone really want to go to the Brahma Jyoti for millions and millions of years, just so you don't have to take birth again? I'm not interested in that. I mean, I sometimes feel, I really don't want to take birth again. Not in this world, please. You don't have to be a genius to see that it's hurtling toward disaster. The climate, politics, whatever you look at it, So you don't want to take birth again here, but that's not our main motivation. That's a sustained motivation, though. I just got to get out. It's not fear. The motivation for the bhakta is ultimately love. It's the attraction of Krishna, and the feeling of appreciation for the mercy and the compassion of those who love us. Why would Prabhupada come? If he didn't feel the connection with all the different souls, because they're part and parcel of Krishna, and he's feeling compassionate. But isn't that what we sing every morning? What is it? Sangsara Davadana Loka Tranaya Karunya Ganaganatmam. The quality of a cloud of mercy. I mean, that's the attractive thing about Krishna consciousness is the very strong basic principle of love and appreciating for those who have proven their love for you by sacrificing themselves, as Prabhupada did. So that just obliterates all of these other motivations, which we should be very thankful for, because it's all in the motive. Everything is talking about the motive. Why are you doing what you're doing? If you have no connection with Krishna consciousness, those motives are boiling up from your own body. You're bound up with the forces of the senses and the mind. Is going to keep you bound up, and that's the only thing that makes sense. How can I fill my belly? How can I get safety? How can I make some money? I got my wife, I got my little kids, I work for them. So that just completely takes over your mind. But you can see, it's obvious that will bind you. What is that? Beginning of second canto. People who have, no interest in such things, they have a million things to store their mind in, hearing, seeing, a million different devices to get absorbed in. Wasting that time at night, sleeping, having sex, daytime, make money, where's money? Weekend, spend it, support the kids, Now you don't have to wait till the weekend, just get on Amazon, and mind is absorbed in those things day and night for the rest of your life. So to be saved from that and have a chance to absorb our mind in these subject matters, Krishna, transcendence, it never goes out of style. It's always pertinent. I was supposed to give a class. The topic was what is the pertinence of Prabhupada's teachings. The permanent pertinence, are they pertinent for today? So we were studying the Dashamula, the 10 roots of philosophy, to show how they're eternally important for living entities. So we're very fortunate to have this instruction from Prabhupada, from Krishna directly. All right, let's do one or two more. Yeah, we got a question, a comment?
Yes, Prabhu. We got a question from Prakash Prabhu. He is on the YouTube today, not on the Zoom. So he asked a question. What does it mean when it is said he is never overcome by evil? Does not falling down and engaging in sinful activities mean he is overcome by evil?
Okay. Let's see. That was in text 40. Transcendentalist engagement especially does not meet with destruction either in this world or in the spiritual world. One who does good, my friend, is not overcome by evil. Well, the idea is that you have to look at the long range perspective of a person's life, not just this one lifetime. Yes, if you deviate from Krishna consciousness, you can suffer and take birth again, certainly, and so forth. But what you have done genuinely in the service is to your eternal asset, and that will help you in the future life to again take up Krishna consciousness. So you may go through some suffering, just like the basic suffering of death and rebirth. I mean, that's true of anyone who doesn't go back to Godhead. Even if you've done quite well, the 60%, but still you got to take birth again. So that in itself is a suffering. But overcome means that you be defeated, and you lose everything. You're not overcome because your spiritual asset will manifest again in this life or the next life, and you'll be able to take up where you'll again meet devotees, you'll again be interested, you'll again take up the chanting and be able to progress. So that's what he's speaking. Krishna is speaking from a long perspective here. That one who does good, my friend, is never overcome by evil. Whereas those who have no assets in Krishna consciousness, who simply are absorbed in sense gratification and performing vicious deeds, sinful deeds, then their destination is unknown. Nunam parmatva kurate vikarma yadindriya priteyapanoti. Certainly those who simply dedicate their lives to sense gratification, says Lord Rishabhdev, are mad. They're sure to get another body, and they're sure to suffer, and probably for a very long time, because they go down to the lower species and come back up. That's what it means to be overcome by evil. But if you have some assets in Krishna consciousness, then yes, you have to suffer for some time, which may seem a long time to you, but relatively short, and you'll again take up the process. So the question is, why should we even detour for a short time? Let's stay strong so that our path is clear. Even though we may not get back in one lifetime, we'll still take up the process nicely in the next life and move forward strongly. So it's a question of looking at the perspective, of long perspective. For a sincere devotee, there may be so many apparent setbacks, but in the long run, that's the only auspicious path, and you will not be defeated by the material energy in the final analysis. Hare Krishna. All right, let's do at least one more here. We did Shuchinam Shrimatam Gehe, pure family, Brahmins or rich family, so 42. Even better destination, Atava Yoginam Eva Kule Bhavati Dhimatam Etad Dhidhur Labataram Loke Janma Yadidrisham. Or, if unsuccessful after long practice of yoga, now he's talking about the short practice falling down, now long practice of yoga, he takes his birth in a family of transcendentalists who are surely great in wisdom. Certainly, such a birth is rare in this world. Purport. Birth in a family of yogis or transcendentalists, those with great wisdom, is praised herein because the child born in such a family receives a spiritual impetus from the very beginning of his life. It is especially the case in the Acharya or Goswami families. Such families are very learned and devoted by tradition and training, and thus they become spiritual masters. In India there are many such Acharya families, but they have now degenerated due to insufficient education and training. By the grace of the Lord, there are still families that foster transcendentalists generation after generation. It is certainly very fortunate to take birth in such families. Fortunately, both our spiritual master, Om Vishnupad Shri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, and our humble self had the opportunity to take birth in such families by the grace of the Lord, and both of us were trained in devotional service of the Lord from the very beginning of our lives. Later on, we met by the order of the transcendental system. So this is a great advantage, and Srila Prabhupada was very hopeful. He established these gurukuls, and a lot of kids growing up in the movement, and they all received invaluable instruction. Even today, 45 years later, they still remember those verses, and they treasure those times in the gurukul. And so, and especially if you're, a family like Srila Prabhupada's or Bhaktivinoda Thakur, you can imagine growing up in that family. So that's the best birth you can get. Much better than a rich industrialist or even a Brahmin or a yogi, but a devotee, especially a pure devotee. It's very rare and very fortunate and very auspicious. And among those, that's where you find the greatest practitioners and propagators of Krishna consciousness, both in Prabhupada and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. That they were, he was manifested that absolute strong determination, both of them, Bhaktisiddhanta, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, all of them, very strong determination to spread Lord Chaitanya's teachings and save the fallen people. It's all a question, as we've been reading in the morning, these wonderful quotes, to transform or purify the taste, the interest of the people in large. Somehow or other, rack your brains, to attract their mind so that they'll be attracted to Krishna. And that's what Srila Prabhupada gave. And Lord Chaitanya gave the best way, the Sankirtan, the holy name, and chanting and dancing and feasting and putting on festivals is the essence of Lord Chaitanya's movement. And that's really the best way to attain samadhi in this age also, is to always be celebrating Krishna and glorifying and making friends with the innocent. We try to come to that secondary platform. Yes, Madhyama Adhikari. Ishware Tadadineshu. Balaram, you know it? Yeah. Trishatsucha. Then what's the 4 ways of relating? Prema, Maitri. Yeah. Yakaroti Samadhyama. Thank you. So there's these 4 different categories: the Lord Himself, those related to the Lord, the innocent, and the envious. So you relate to them differently. So the Lord, you try to awaken your love, prema. For devotees, friendship. For the innocent, compassion, give them Krishna. And for the envious, you avoid them. You see. So that's the platform we should try to come to. And there's so much work and so many wonderful ways that you can try to help those innocent people, as we've been helped to take up Krishna consciousness, begin that that path out of the darkness of this material world. And so that's okay. I'm going to end on a high note. What is that verse? Whole bata. Oh, that's the one I'm just reading that we're going to read tomorrow. But he says, aho bir nakale vaduyate sudha sudhara madaram pade pade dine dine chandana chandra shitalam yasho yashoratana yasagiyate. Because at every step they drink a flood of wondrous nectar sweet, whose cooling power sandal paste enhanced with camphor can't defeat, they feel as if the raging blaze of Kali's days had ne'er begun. How blessed are they who fill their days with praise of Shri Yashoda's son. So let's fill our days with praise of Shri Yashoda's son. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.